Putin just made the one concession he swore he'd never make. In a secret summit that lasted hours, Trump walked away with something no president has achieved. But this victory might have just triggered the most dangerous phase of this war yet. For over 3 years, Vladimir Putin has drawn one unbreakable red line. Ukraine must never, ever receive NATO protection. It's the hill he's been willing to die on, the reason he started this war. But on Friday, in an Alaskan military base shrouded in secrecy, that red line just got obliterated. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff walked into those negotiations knowing Putin was cornered. Russia's economy is bleeding, his military is exhausted, and his closest allies are starting to whisper about alternatives. What nobody expected was how far Putin would bend. Article 5 of NATO is the nuclear option of international relations. An attack on one member is an attack on all members. It's what kept the Soviet Union in check for decades, and it's what Putin fears most. For him to agree to an Article 5-like protection for Ukraine isn't just a concession, it's a complete strategic surrender. Witkoff called it game-changing, but that's an understatement. This is Putin admitting that his entire justification for this war was wrong. He invaded to prevent NATO expansion, and now he's essentially allowing it through the back door. Trump abandoned his original plan for an immediate ceasefire, and it was genius. Instead of demanding Putin stop shooting, he focused on what Putin could live with long-term. It's classic Trump negotiation. Skip the small wins, go straight for the grand slam. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Trump knows Putin is running out of time. Every month this war continues, Russia gets weaker while Ukraine gets stronger. Putin needed a face-saving exit, and Trump just handed him one, with massive strings attached. Within hours of the announcement, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was standing next to Zelensky, pledging European support for these new guarantees. This isn't just diplomatic courtesy, this is panic. Europe knows that if America leads on Ukraine's security, Europe follows America's rules. But here's the terrifying part for Putin. Europe has been preparing for exactly this moment. They've been building their own defense industrial base, their own military capabilities. Putin thought he was negotiating with Trump. He was actually negotiating with the entire Western alliance. Notice what Zelensky didn't do in Brussels. He didn't celebrate. He thanked America, but immediately listed his concerns. There are no details how it will work. This isn't diplomatic politeness. This is a leader who's been burned by empty promises before. Zelensky knows something we don't. Putin's word means nothing without enforcement mechanisms. The Ukrainian president has spent 3 years watching international agreements get shredded the moment Putin finds them inconvenient. He's not about to get fooled again. Back in Moscow, Putin's inner circle is trying to process what just happened. For 3 years, they've been told this war was about preventing NATO expansion. Now their leader just agreed to the very thing they went to war to prevent. Russian military bloggers, the ones who actually influence public opinion, are already asking dangerous questions. If Putin was willing to accept this deal now, why didn't he accept it before 700,000 Russians were killed or wounded? That's not just a political problem for Putin. That's an existential threat. Witkoff mentioned the elephant in the room. Land swaps. Putin keeps the territory he's conquered. Ukraine gets security guarantees for what remains. It sounds reasonable until you remember what those territories contain. Ukraine's industrial heartland, its grain production centers, and about 6 million Ukrainian civilians. This isn't just about lines on a map. This is about whether kidnapping civilians and stealing land can be rewarded with international recognition. Putin is betting that Western fatigue will overcome Western principles. He might be right. Here's what Putin doesn't realize he just agreed to. NATO expansion by another name. These Article 5-like protections mean American troops, European troops, and Western weapons permanently stationed in Ukraine. It's NATO membership without the paperwork. More dangerously for Putin, it creates a precedent. If Ukraine can get NATO protection without NATO membership, what about Georgia? What about Moldova? Putin just opened a door he can never close again. Putin's economists have been screaming warnings he can no longer ignore. Russia is spending 40% of its federal budget on this war. Defense contractors are running out of workers because they're all at the front. The ruble is collapsing despite desperate currency controls. Every month Putin delays this deal, Russia gets poorer and weaker. He's not negotiating from strength anymore. He's negotiating to avoid complete economic collapse. Trump's team knows this, which is why they're pushing for more concessions. Putin's worst nightmare is becoming reality, a militarized, unified Europe. Germany just announced its largest military spending increase since World War II. Poland is building the strongest land army in Europe. Even neutral Finland joined NATO and is militarizing its Russian border. This war was supposed to divide Europe and weaken NATO. Instead, it's created the most formidable Western military alliance in history. Putin didn't just lose Ukraine, he lost any chance of European neutrality for the next generation. But here's what nobody saw coming. Putin's concession wasn't just about Ukraine, it was about preventing something much worse. American intelligence sources are now revealing that Putin agreed to these terms because he knows what's really coming. China is preparing to abandon him entirely. Beijing has been quietly negotiating its own deals with Washington, and Putin just realized he's about to be completely alone. The meeting at the White House tomorrow will determine whether this historic concession becomes lasting peace or just another broken promise. Zelensky holds the final card, Ukraine's acceptance of these terms. But perhaps the most important question isn't whether this deal will work, it's whether Putin can survive making it. He started this war as Russia's strongman leader. He's ending it as America's reluctant negotiating partner. History will remember this as the moment when the post-Cold War era truly ended. Not with the fall of a wall, but with a phone call from Alaska, where Putin finally said the word he swore he never would. Yes. What happens next will define the next century of global politics. What do you think Putin's real motivations are? Let me know in the comments below, hit that subscribe button for more breaking analysis, and share this with anyone who needs to understand how dramatically the world just changed.